fluent in Russian to extract important information. I, for one, am looking forward to it. A few notes before we begin. First, many of you have submitted questions in advance, which Dr. Levine has incorporated within his remarks. As we go along, if you have any questions, you can enter them in the Q&A section, and we will try to get to them towards the end of the presentation. Second, this session is being recorded and will be available on our Facebook page, facebook.com/JewishGen.org, and on the JewishGen YouTube channel within a few days. Once the recordings are live, we will post a message on our discussion group. If you're not on the discussion group, please visit the JewishGen.org homepage and click on Connect. I'd like to thank Yefim Kogan and Ina Viner, co-directors of Bessarabia Research, for organizing this presentation. To learn more about the Bessarabia Research Division, which Yefim and Ina are co-directing, please visit JewishGen.org/Bessarabia. Finally, again, please note that this is the first presentation in the fall series of Jewish Gen Talks. You can learn about upcoming webinars by visiting JewishGen.org/live. We will also be sending out emails and posting on the discussion group. Currently, we are working on a webinar for DNA and 2 more sessions on migration patterns and names, and information will be distributed in the days and weeks ahead. A note about our speaker. Dr. Alan Levine received his Ph.D. in applied mathematics from Stony Brook University and has been a professor at Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania since 1983. He started researching his family in 2004. Some of his paternal's grandmother's family came from Teleneshti and Kishinev. In 2007, he contacted Bob Wascou, Zecher Lavracha, about doing some translations of vital records from Russian. After Bob's passing, he has been volunteering for Yefim Kogan and the JewishGen Bessarabia Research Division. We thank Dr. Levine very, very much for giving this presentation. And now, without any further ado, we welcome Dr. Alan Levine. Dr. Levine, I think you're on mute. Dr. Levine, your computer is on mute.
How's that?
Perfect.
Good. All right. This technology drives me nuts sometimes. So I would like to thank Avraham and Yefim and Ina for inviting me to give this talk. As Avraham said, I've been in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, teaching math at Franklin and Marshall College for about 37 years or so. And I'm learning how to teach online this semester, which is very strange. I back in college, I learned a little bit. I need to put this on play. How does that sound? Oh, come on. There we go. Now, is it on full screen now? Okay. So about 45 years ago in college, I studied Russian for a couple of years, and I didn't really use it much. There's not a lot of Russian speakers here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But as Avrami said, I started doing some translating first for Bob Wascou, who, by the way, grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and went to the synagogue I go to, and some of his relatives are still there. And so that got me started, and then Yefim has kept me hugely busy for the last 6 years or so, mostly with revision lists. And I've probably done, I don't know, 75,000 records by now. I've lost count long ago. A couple of years ago, I came across a Russian textbook, a math book on probability by a famous Russian mathematician named Markov. And I managed to translate the whole book, which surprised me, but it's math and it's got lots of equations, so you can just sort of guess what the words are. And I can't really say anything in Russian. Okay, I remember a few phrases like "Добрый день," which is good day, and "Как вы поживаете" is how are you, and "Как вас зовут" is what's your name, and "Очень приятно с вами познакомиться" is very pleased to meet you. But that's about it. Yeah. So, and you don't need to be able to speak Russian much at all to do what I'm going to try to explain to you. So how did I come about to give this talk? Well, last summer, 2019, in Cleveland, I signed up to do some translating at the tables they have set up. I signed up for about an hour a day, and it turned into maybe 3 or 4 hours a day. And because there was just nonstop people wanting stuff translated. At some point, Yefim came by and dragged me out for lunch. So that gave me the idea that, maybe I could teach people how to do this translating. And so I think if you're willing to put in a little time, okay, and effort, I think you'll be able to at least pick out names and places and relevant information. So will you be able to, so this would be out of, documents like birth certificates and things of that sort. If you have a postcard from your great-great-uncle Chaim to your grandmother, will you be able to translate that? Depends on Uncle Chaim's handwriting mostly. And will you be able to read War and Peace? No, not a chance. So, and I think what I'm telling you here will work for some other languages, like Polish or German or Romanian, Yiddish, probably Yiddish. I'm not sure about Hebrew because the vowels aren't there. So it's hard to phonetically pronounce things. But I've used it for Polish many, many times. All right, so obviously the first thing you need to know is the alphabet. All right, so here's the Russian alphabet. It uses Cyrillic characters. Okay? So there are several languages that use a Cyrillic character set. Russian is one, Ukrainian is another, and Bulgarian is another. I'm sure there's many others. So there's about 20 consonants, 11 vowels, and 2 non-vocalized letters. And then there are also 2 other vowels that are no longer used, okay, but they were prevalent prior to 1917. In 1917, they changed the alphabet a little bit, threw out a bunch of letters and some other stuff that I'll explain. So modern Russian is a little bit different than older Russian, okay? And on the bottom line there, okay, those first 3 letters, 2 of which are non-vocalized, they're never capitalized, but I've given you capital and lowercase for all the other letters. And you look at this and you say, well, I recognize some letters. There's something that looks like an A and something that looks like a B and an E and a K and an M and an H and an O, or C, T, Y, X. Well, maybe they sound like they do in English. Well, not quite. Some of them do. And so there's about 6 letters which, for the most part, sound like they would in English. So there's an A and Ye, okay, and Ka and M and O and Te. Okay, so that's, those are the ones that are closest to their English equivalent. But then there's a few more that look like English, but they don't sound like English. So the one that looks like a B is really ve, and the one that looks like H is N, and the one that looks like P is R, and the one that looks like C is S, and the one that looks like a Y is U, and then there's an X, which is a Cha. And if you're going to translate or transliterate that letter, you should do it with KH, not CH, because there's another letter later on, cha, which sounds like English CH, and we would do that as CH. But the one that's a is should be written KH. And you might remember in the old days of the Soviet Union, you'd see banners and athletes had on their jerseys CCCP, but that's SSSR, which stands for Союз Советских Социалистических Республик, or Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. You can say that 3 times fast. Okay, so now that takes care of about 12 letters, and here's the rest. So there's a be and ge and da, and then there's a ye with an umlaut on it, which makes it yo. Okay, so I guess the 2 of them next to each other makes yo-yo. I don't know. Then je and ze and e, okay, which is a backwards and. And then if you put a little hat on it, it's e kratke. Kratke means short, okay, so, or small. So that's a smaller, shorter e. And there's L, okay, and then pe, which looks like Greek pi. That's good. And an F, which looks like a Greek phi. And then se and che and sha and sha. That's hard to say, and it's not very common, but it's like in fresh cheese. So it's a SHCH. And then there's a vowel, it's called yeri. And it's hard to tell you how to pronounce it. It's close to a short I, but not exactly. But we're not going speaking Russian. So you just have to get an approximate sound for it. And then there's 3 more vowels, e, u, and ya. And so you really do need to get these, to really learn what these letters are and how they sound. And I'll tell you how to do that in a second. There's a few other letters and whatever, symbols. So there's this thing called myaky znak, which is a soft sign. And that follows some consonants. It could be at the end of the word, could be in the middle of a word. So a word like Dutch, there's a soft sign after the cha, and it makes it a little softer. Or in a name like Feldman, there's the soft sign after the L. So it's the 4th letter in, and it just makes the L softer. Then there's a hard sign, a tvrdy znak, which prior to 1917, this sign appeared at the end of many words that ended in a consonant. Essentially what happened was any word that ended in consonant either had a soft sign or a hard sign, but then they decided they really didn't need both. If there wasn't a soft sign, then it was hard. So they took away all the hard signs, except for a few words where it's in the middle. So there's a word like siedat, which means to eat, or object, which means object. Okay? So it makes a difference whether the consonant is hard or soft. And if you take a word like brat, with a hard T at the end, you will see it in these documents with the tvrdy znak after the T. But brat with a softer T, that's a verb, which means to take. All right, so those signs are there, but the hard sign is really not very common. Okay, and then there's 2 vowels that were there and aren't there anymore. So there's one that looks like an I, and that's desyaterichnoye I, which means 10th I. And it might have been the 10th letter of the alphabet. It kind of depends on how you count. But that letter is gone from Russian, okay? And it's been replaced by the regular E, the backwards N. And I said this is gone from Russian, but it's still in other Cyrillic alphabets, like Ukrainian. So if you see a modern document and you're not sure if it's Russian or Ukrainian, look for this letter. If it's there, it's Ukrainian. And if it's not there, it's Russian. Or maybe it's, I don't know about Bulgarian. So, and then there's this other obsolete vowel, which is hard to do on a typewriter because there's no such character. And so what I did was I took the soft side, and I did a strike through on it. And it's not exactly what it looks like, but it was the closest I could get. And that's called Yat. Yeah, nice short name as opposed to Jesetrichnaye I. And so this has been replaced by Ye. And you'll see it, we'll see some words that have this vowel in it. But in modern Russian, they're not there anymore. Okay. So here's the strategies. Okay. There's very good news. Okay. Unlike English, Russian is mostly phonetic. Okay. Every letter is pronounced, okay, and they're pronounced the same way, or at least the consonants are pronounced the same way almost every time. There's one exception I'll get to in a minute. Vowels can be stressed or unstressed, and it depends on what the word is. And there aren't really any rules I could give you as to whether where the stressed syllable is. And but it really does. It really doesn't matter. But if you see a word like cha o er o sha o, the accent is on the last syllable, so it's хорошо, and the first two O's are not stressed, so it sounds a little different. That means good. Okay, so here's some strategies. If there are lots of websites, there are lots of YouTube videos, okay, which will help you learn the alphabet, and just Google Russian alphabet. Or later we need to do the cursive alphabet. So they're really good. And if you spend some time with them, it'll help you get the alphabet under control. And now here's the secret sauce. If you go to Google Translate, so that's an app, you can get it on your phone or your computer, okay? Type in an English word like dog, or house, or a short phrase like good morning, okay? Google Translate will give you the Russian equivalent, okay? And you can try to pronounce it. And then Google Translate will pronounce it for you. And you can see how well you did. And again, the vowels could change due to stress, but that's, don't worry about that for now. Okay. I said there was one exception for the phonetic pronunciation, and that's the letter ge. So when ge appears between a ye and an o, or between two o's, it's pronounced like ve. I don't know why, but it is, okay? And so a word like ye, ge, o is yevo, not yego. And so that's the only exception that I can think of to phonetic pronunciation. And you will see this, this combination here at the end of masculine and neuter adjectives in the genitive case. Don't let that scare you. I'll explain it in a minute. Okay. So here's the cursive alphabet. And it's, I did the best I could to replicate it. But again, you can find some websites, okay, and that have this here. There's a couple of things I should point out though. If you look at the Shah, okay, that's the second one down on the right column, okay? The lowercase Shah looks like a W. And if you compare that to the E, okay, which is the third one up from the bottom on the left, okay, that looks like a U, okay? And if you string these things together, like in the word Kishinev, it starts to look unintelligible after a while. It's just a bunch of loops. And so if you're lucky, they put this underbar under the Shah. Yeah? And it's not always there, which is annoying. Yeah? The same thing is true with the te. Okay, so that looks like the T in the middle column. In cursive, it looks like an M. And if you're lucky, again, there'll be an overbar on the lowercase te. It's just that it helps you distinguish what it is when it's connected to other similar letters. And there's a few other things that can get a little annoying. The A and the O could look alike in lowercase f, that's the third from the bottom in the middle, okay? Sometimes the two loops don't connect so well, and it could look like yeah and an error or something that it's not supposed to be. And the lowercase de, okay, that's fifth one down on the left. Okay, there's two versions of it. One looks like a English G, the other looks like a Greek delta or partial derivative for you math geeks out there. And those are interchangeable. You see them both frequently, sometimes in the same word. And so you just have to get used to it, that there's two versions of it. And the same thing is true with the lowercase te. There's one that looks like the M, and there's one that looks like something else. I'm not sure how to describe that. But again, you will see both of those in use a lot. So oh yeah, there's one other thing. If you look at the M, which is the top of the second column, and the L, which is the bottom of the first column, the lowercase ones have these little hooks at the beginning, and sometimes those hooks get a little too big, in which case the M could look like a Shah, and that can be annoying as well. But you kind of get used to it as you read through the document. You see, how does that particular writer make these letters? And you kind of get a flow as to what's going on. All right, now I need to tell you a little grammar. Okay, Russian grammar is somewhat complicated, and it's more complicated than English. So there's the nouns and the adjectives are declined into 6 cases. Okay? I don't know if you've studied German. There are 4 cases in German, and I think also in Latin. But in Russian, there are 6, which are nominative, accusative, genitive, dative, instrumental, and locative, which used to be called prepositional. And it depends on how it's used in the sentence. All right, Russian's not the worst. Polish has 7 cases. So the nominative case is used for the subject of the sentence. The accusative case is for direct objects, and the dative case would be for indirect objects, and so on. And there are different prepositions require different cases. So a preposition like drya, which means for, takes the genitive case, but a preposition like na, which means on, takes the locative case. And there isn't really a rhyme or reason to all of that. Then there's 3 genders, masculine, feminine, neuter, and singular and plural. So there's lots and lots of different combinations, and they don't all have different endings, but you have to accept the fact that that the same word could appear with 4 or 5 different endings. But the good news is you don't need to know very much of the specifics. I long ago forgot what all of these endings are. I just know that they're there. And so if you're looking at a word And so here's a sentence, okay? Kniga lежит na stole. Okay? So kniga means book, and that's the subject of the sentence. And book, so kniga is in the nominative case. And stolye, the last word is, stol means table, and stolye is the locative case because it's on the table. So the book lies on the table, tells you its location. On the other hand, if you say ya chitayo knigu, means ya means I, chitayo I'm reading, okay? And now knigu is the direct object. So it has to be in the accusative case. All right, so if you're looking something up in a dictionary or you want to see what this word knigu means, you won't find knigu in a dictionary. Google Translate probably knows what it is, but the dictionary only gives nominative cases. So you need to know that, well, maybe I should try a different vowel at the end, and you'll find the word. A couple of other odds and ends, okay? There's no article in Russian, so there's no word the, and they don't exist. There's no verb to be in the present tense, but it's there in the past and the future. Okay? And here's maybe the most annoying thing is use of hyphens. So you could see a word, half of it is at the end of one line and the rest of it is at the beginning of another line, and there's no hyphen. So you don't know if it's one word or two. And that can be really annoying until you realize what's going on. Okay. One other thing I should say about Russian is that the word order is flexible, and that's because they have these different cases. So you can say, I gave my dog a bone, or to my dog I gave a bone, or a bone to my dog I gave, or any other combinations, any other word order. And because of the cases, you'll know it's not my dog gave me a bone, or I gave a dog to my bone, or something. It has to be because of the cases. All right, so I'm going to give you some vocabulary, some nice set of words that you will encounter a lot. So like family members, we'll start there. And I've given you the singular and the plural. The reason I'm giving you the plural is because they're a little unusual, some of them, okay? Normally for plural, if the word ends in a consonant, you either put an E or a yeli out after the last consonant. So if you go down to grandson, okay, the singular is vnuk and the plural is vnuki, or granddaughter is vnuchka, and you make vnuchki for the plural. But here, some of these are just not standard. So the word for son is sin, and the plural is sinovia, okay, which is very unusual. And in Deutsch, the plural is docheri, and so on down the line, okay? But you'll see the words in the plural and in the singular. So I gave them both to you here because it's not quite so obvious. Okay, here's some other useful vocabulary. And so the second one, we saw that word before, it's yevo. It looks like yego, but it's yevo. It means his. The next one is yeya, which is what it was in the old days, but now it's yeyo for her, okay? It's part of many changes in 1917. And then if you go a few more down from there, there's this word razvod. Razvod means divorced, okay? And the one below that, vidava, is a widow. But you put them together and you get this phrase called vidava parazvodu, which literally is widow by divorce. which is kind of a strange phrase. I decided it meant divorced, but it's just a strange way of putting it. And then about 3 more down from there, there's my favorite phrase is "V'neizvestnoy otluchk," which means in an unknown place. In the revision list especially, they will always have like 2 ages. So they'll give you the age from the previous revision and the age from the current revision. And sometimes people disappear. And so if they can't find the person and they don't think he's dead, they'll put this "V'neizvestnoy otluchk" in there. One of you out there, I think, sent me a message last week with a phrase that he came across, and I'd never seen it before, but it's "propal biaz viesti," and I had to look it up, and it sort of means disappeared without evidence or left without a trace, and I think that's the same thing. Okay. And finally, at the bottom is Reviski Askaski, which is the revision list. All right. And here's some numbers in months. Okay. So the numbers 1 through 10 are Adin, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we get to the teens, okay, and you'll notice they all end in natsat. Okay, so there's Adinatsat, Vinatsat, Trinatsat, etc. And I don't know if you've ever read the novel A Clockwork Orange, but in that novel, the main character, Alex, I think is his name, he speaks a dialect, which is a combination of Russian and English, and he calls it Natsat, which is essentially teen. So I guess you could call that teen speak or something. So some of the words he uses are Russian, like drug, which means friend. But I haven't read the book, but I got that from Cliff Notes. Okay, so there's the months, okay, and all right, so the last thing we have to talk about is social classes. And this again is a complicated topic, but it's there's essentially 3 social classes. The Mieszczanin, okay, is a middle class or a townsman. You'll sometimes see it translated as petty bourgeoisie. I've never been able to write that because I don't know what exactly it means. But middle class townsmen, those are a pretty good description. Then kupiec is a merchant, and this is the upper class. Okay? These are not the guys working the checkout at Walmart. Okay, these are the business owners, and sometimes there's guilds, 1, 2, or 3. I don't know which one is the highest. And there's relatives, so you might see kupiecin, so that's the merchant's son, or and other relatives. So that's the upper class, and then the agricultural or colonists. That's земледелие. That's a hard word to say. It's easier to say colonist, and so there's a bunch of colonies, Gorica and others, that these people have moved to, and that will be noted in the documents. Okay, now we should talk about names, surnames. We could go on for hours and hours about the history of Russian surnames, but I will leave that for another lecture or for you to look at books by Alexander Biter. He's the world's expert on Eastern European surnames. So so you can go look at his books. But for purposes of this, talk, okay, we can think of a lot of surnames as having 2 parts. Okay? There's a root and a suffix. And So the suffixes are things that you would see in English: man, stein, berg, boim, broit, ski, and so on. And the roots are other things you would see: Braun, Wein, Weiss, Gold, Silber, Klein, Reusen, Reut, Trachtenfeld, Zucker, Schwarz, and so on. And so if you take a root and a suffix, you get nice surnames like Bronstein, or Weinberg, or Weissman, or Miller, or Schwarzman, or Goldberg, Reusenstein, Trachtenbreut. And that covers maybe 2/3 of the surnames. And sometimes you can get two roots together, like Reusenfeld or Weingold. But as I say, this is about 2/3, and that will help. Because if you see, okay, well, here's a name that looks like it starts with Ge-O and maybe an L, so it's gold something maybe, and pick see if you can find out what the suffix is. Okay, and it's even better for the given names. So I've given you here a list of very common, I think there's about 70 of them here, but very, very common masculine given names. And that's, this will help a lot, because sometimes you can see the first couple letters and not make out the rest. So if you see M-O and you say, well, what could it be after that? Well, if you go to this list, you say, well, it's either Moshe or Moshko or Mordko or Mortko. I left out Menashe. But there's, it narrows down the possibilities for you. And traditional Russian names, the ones that you think of, Ivan and Nikolai and Vladimir and Alexander and Boris and Dmitri, I've never seen any of them on Jewish people. Maybe an Alexander or two. Last year or so, I was looking at this book called Visa Rossiya, which means all Russia. It's like a yellow pages, and it lists all the industries and the people that own them. And we had to kind of distinguish between the Jews and the non-Jews. And it turned out to be instructive to look at the first names and not the surnames. So if there was somebody named Vladimir, he probably wasn't Jewish. So it's a separate set of names pretty much for Jews and non-Jews, and that's good. The other thing I mentioned is, and I think this is a Ukrainian Bessarabian thing, that there's men's names that end in ko. So Berko and Volko and Gershko and Itzko and Moshko. And I don't know that you'll see that up in like Belarus or in northern parts. I don't know exactly, but for the Bessarabian stuff that I've been doing, it's all over the place. Almost every male, or half of them anyway, have these names that end in ko. All right, and here's some feminine names, and again, the usual ones you think of as Natasha or Alexandra or Katerina, and they're not here. Okay. All right, it's time to do some actual translating here. So this is a revision list. Okay, Reviskaya Skazka, so it says on the top. Okay, and so underneath that title there, it says 1848 year, Golda is year. Okay, then Dekyabra 26, okay, it's 26th of December for Bessarabskoye Oblasti. So that's the Bessarabian Oblast, which is like a county or state. Okay, and then the Gorod city, Teleneshti, is where this is from. And then underneath that, it's there's the there's the family name, and sorry, my phone is ringing, but it'll stop. And then it says Muzheshki Pol, which is male sex, okay, and then it says age at the last revision, and then there's some other stuff in the next column, which I'll get to, and then finally the age at the current revision. So this is 1848. Okay? The previous one was 1835. So these two numbers that you see here should be 13 apart, except for the guy on the bottom who wasn't born then. So I'll tell you what it says exactly on the next slide. So this is the male half of the page. Here's the female, Zhenski Pol. And it just has the current age. It doesn't give you previous ages or anything. So I'm not sure why, but I guess these people are married, these women are married to the men. And so maybe in the previous revision, they were still with their father in the family house. I'm not sure exactly why this is. So what does it say? Okay, so the head of the household is Mayor Mortkovich Zekaner, and he has several children. Okay, and so the next line says Meira Mortkovicha Sinovia od Piervogeni. So that's Mayor Mortkovich's sons from his first wife. Okay, and that's a genitive case. That's why it's Meir Mortkovicha. But you'll recognize the name. And so the first son is Mortko Yos. So he's currently 25, and he was 12 in the previous revision. Then there's Shloimi, who's 20 and was 7. And then Froim, who's 18, and he was 5. And then Avrum. So Avrum was not on the list of names there, but it's a variation of Avram. And he's 9. And then, so what it said in that box with all of that writing is he was born in 1839. So that's why he's 9 years old, but he wasn't around in 1835. And then on the women's side, it says Meir Mortkovich Vitora Brachnaya Zhina Golda. So Vitora, it comes from Vitoroi, which is second. So this is his second wife, Golda. And then it says his daughter, Leah, who's 6. It's not entirely clear whether that daughter comes from the first wife or the second wife, but I think it's probably the second wife. Otherwise, it would say it was from the first wife, like it did for the sons. And then the oldest son, Mortko Yos, he's married, and his wife is named Ruchel Leah, and they have 2 daughters, Chasya and Sura. Okay, so if you're going to do any translating, officially, you want to make sure you write the surnames in capital letters. Okay. All right, here's a marriage record. This is from 1903. And so the columns on the top, the good thing about I should have said this before, okay, is that a lot of the documents are in column form, okay, which helps a lot, but some of them are in paragraph form, where that makes it a little harder. Most of the Polish documents I've seen are in paragraph form, but you can still look for the names and the places and the ages, and you may not know what every word means, but you'll get the essence of it. Okay. But these are columns, which is good. And the columns are printed in print, okay? And so if you're not sure of the words, you can look them in a dictionary or use Google Translate. So the first column is the number of the record. So this is the 297th marriage of this year. And then there's the ages of the bride and the groom. And then it says who performed the ceremony. So that would be the rabbi. And then there's dates. Okay, so it says Chisloi Miesets. That's the date on the month. And there's 2 dates. One is from the Christian calendar and the other is from the Hebrew calendar. Now you don't see anything written there because I cut this out of the middle of a page. And so the dates are at the top, and there's just ditto marks here, which so you don't see them, but I'll tell you what they are later. And so so with the Christian dates, you have to remember that there were two calendars. There's a Julian calendar and a Gregorian calendar, and they're 12 days apart. And various people, various countries changed at different times. So late 19th century is about when the change occurred, but in a lot of documents, you might see two Christian dates. So like it happened on the 13th or the 25th of May, okay, two dates 12 apart. But here it's just one, and I'm pretty sure this is Gregorian by 1903. And so on the top there it says, important documents and some other stuff, or witnesses. We'll translate it exactly later. And then the column on the right says exactly who was married and the names and the classes of the parents. Okay. All right, so here we go. So there's the age, okay, and then there's who performed the rite of betrothal and marriage, okay, the dates, okay, of the two calendars, then major certificates or records and obligations between those being joined in marriage and the witnesses. So all of these events had witnesses. Now, it's not like in the United States where you will bring a relative to be the witness. These are sort of professional witnesses. If you look at all of the marriages in Kishinev in 1903, almost all of them have the same witnesses. So it's not like here. And then who exactly marries whom and the names and the status of the parents. All right, so here we go. So the rabbi, his first name was abbreviated Res, and I'm not sure what that's short for, but his last name is Choplanach, and there's the dates now, July 25th and 19th of Av. Okay? So there's a marriage contract, which in Russian is Kasuba, but in Yiddish is Ketuba, or Hebrew, okay? And a dowry of 48 rubles of silver. And that was the going rate. If the bride was not married, had never been married before, the going rate was 48 rubles. If she was widowed or divorced, it was 24 rubles. And I probably shouldn't say this, but it's sort of like buying a used car, maybe. Anyway, so the witnesses are Moshe Greenspoon and El Yingolds, and then the rest of the information is that the bachelor Tiraspol townsman Shlema Eliev Moltavsky, by order of Tiraspol rabbi on the 27th of July, 1903, so record number 586. And the maiden, the bride is Shura Dobry, daughter of Kishinev townsman Moshko Greenspoon. So that's pretty much all you need to, all the information you need is in that record. Okay. Well, I saved the worst for last. And this is a birth record from Bandari in 1877. Okay, and the columns are sort of the same, the dates, and then the vertical one is where was he born, okay? And then it's status of the father and name of the father and mother, and who was born and what name was given to him or her. And so if you look in that column, the first word there is sin, okay? Stare at it for a while and you'll see it's all there. And it's got the Tvordis knock at the end. And same thing with Chaim, that's the first name of the child, okay? And again, it has the Tvordis knock. And so his name was Chaim Itzko. So that actually isn't so bad, the handwriting there. It's the stuff in the middle here. Okay. So I think I've said all of this. So 19th of December or 25th of Tevet. And where was born, it says Benderach, so in Benderi. And there's the name of the child. And now let's go to the tough part. Okay. And so what it says, okay, and I only figured this out by kind of realizing that this took place in Bendari. And so somebody's got to be a Bendari citizen. And that's sort of what it says at the top. So it says, U Benderskого mieszczanina Duvid Yakovlevicza Kaushanskovo Izhini Basi. Okay, so that means to the Bendari townsman, Duvid Yakov Kaushansky and his wife Basya. Okay? And all of these, everything that's after the first U is in the genitive case, because U means belonging to, and it takes the genitive case. Okay? And so like Bendersky became Benderskovo. Remember before I mentioned adjectives in the genitive case have this ovo ending, which looks like ogo. And so so that's what it says. And I think in some cases there are no hyphens, which is annoying. But that's pretty much it. All right, and the middle name of the father is, it says Yakovlevicza or Yakovlevich, that's a patronymic. So if you are translating this, you would just say Yaakov. We don't need the patronymic part. All right, I have one more document I want to show you, and this is hilarious, I think. This is a family list, which is like a revision from Kishinev from 1910. Okay, and which is like the most recent documents we have. And, you know, and so the headings, I'll get to it in a minute, but one thing should sort of pop out to you is that there's this number 110, okay, right up there near the top. And what on earth is going on here? So this is was taken in 1910, and it was based off of the 1859-1860 revision. There was one in between in 1875, and I don't know why they didn't use that. So everything, so those two ages are 50 years apart, mostly. And so, but it's impossible to believe that anyone is 110 years old. So my theory is that they really didn't go door to door, house to house. They took the old revision, copied all the names, added names of people who had been born, and added spouses of people who were married, and then they and any death certificates they had, and for everyone else they just assumed they were alive and added 50 years to their age, no matter how silly it comes out. It's I don't really believe it, but that's what it says. All right, so the family name is Kaufman, and so the father is Duvidov. It's not that common for a son to be named for the father, but it happens, especially if the father had died before the son was born. Okay, so he was 60 in 1860, and I'm sure he's not 110 now, but that's what it says. And he had 4 sons, okay? Elik and Ichel and Berko and Oyzer. Elik disappeared before 1860, so that's why it says Veniez Vestnoyot Luch, 1854. And then Ichel and Berko were around in 1860, and they're still around. And then there's Oyzer, who's 49 now, so he wasn't around in the previous revision. Then Ichel has a son named Usher, and Usher's 31. And the way we know that is that phrase after it says, on the 1st of October of 1896, he was 18 years old. So I mean, I'm not too good at math, but I think that means he's either 31 or 32. And that's where it comes from. Yeah, and then Oizer, the youngest son, he has 5 sons. Yeah, and so there's David, who was born April 7th, 1880. And then the next two are actually twins. It says that on the document. I just didn't write it here. So there's Srul Yosef and Chaim Wolf. Okay? And Srul died. So that's that UM is short for Umir, which means died, okay? On the 12th of June of 1885. And Chaim Wolf, his twin brother, was born on the 29th of June of 1882. So we can figure out how old Chaim Wolf is. He's what, 28? But Srul Yosef died when he was about 3. Okay? And then we have Shmuel Meir, okay, who's 22. They didn't give a birth date for him. And the youngest son, Daniel, he died in 1890 on June 16th. Okay, so yeah, so the second and third sons are Bliznetzi, which means twins. Okay, last page. And so these are the women. So it's David's second wife, Leah. She's 90. I'm pretty sure she's not alive either at this point. Of all the records I've done, I've probably seen fewer than 5 people who are alive in their 90s. And even in the 80s is pretty rare. So usually the oldest people you see are 75 or 78. So 90 would be a stretch, but it's possible she's alive. And then the son Ichel, okay, he has a wife named Rivka, and they have a daughter named Tovba. Now, in all likelihood, Tovba would have been married by now, but they didn't have a marriage record, so they didn't put it in there. And Oizer, the youngest son, has a wife named Etlia. She's 47, and they have 3 daughters. Okay, so I can't explain why they did this way, but it's a very useful list. If you have relatives in Kishinev, you'll find this list somewhere on the website. And also, I wrote a little article about this, which you'll also find on the website. Okay, I think that's all I have to say. And so I see there's a bunch of questions piling up in the Q&A. I'll hang around for a while to answer questions, and feel free to email me. I'll get back to you eventually. This is sort of a busy time trying to figure out how to teach half my students who are there and half of them who aren't. So, but I'll be happy to answer questions. All right, so I'm going to stop this screen sharing, I think.
Dr. Levine, thank you very, very much
for
this fascinating and informative presentation. You're making an extremely complicated language accessible to so many researchers, and we thank you very, very much.
It's my pleasure, and it was fun. So,
it is fun.
Right. So we have, how are we going to do the questions?
So unfortunately, we are running out of time for the webinar. Oh. So what I'm going to suggest is as follows. First of all, many of the questions were inquiring about the slides, which you've graciously agreed to make accessible. And you also, I believe, have a 4-page handout.
Yes. I sent that to you, didn't I, the handout?
I think so.
Yes.
So I think what we will do is we have the recording of this presentation, and we're going to be adding it to our YouTube channel. When that is done, we're going to post a message on our discussion group, and we'll include the links for the slides and for the handout.
Okay.
If people are not on, again, if you're not on the discussion group, please visit the JewishGen.org homepage and click connect. Thank you, Dr. Levine, for agreeing to field questions. Anybody who would like to reach Dr. Levine could email webinars@JewishGen.org, and we will forward your messages. We also encourage you to post on the discussion group, because many of your questions might be of interest to other people, and we can answer them in that forum. I'd like to thank Kaylin Deal, our admin assistant, for her help in running this webinar and setting it up. Our next Jewish Gen Talk will take place on Tuesday, November 10th. Our speaker will be Jeannie Milgram, who will be introducing our new Crypto Jewish Research Division. Please stay tuned for details, along with information about future webinars, which will already include 2 fascinating lectures by Dr. Alexander Bader, who Dr. Levine mentioned in his talk. So thank you again to Dr. Levine and to the hundreds of people who are on this webinar. We're glad that you were able to join us today. We wish you all good health and a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So.